Alrighty, what is going on, guys? This is Austin here from Any and All Podcast, here with my good friend Keegan from Malone Zone. How you doing,
What's
Keegan?
going on, guys?
So I will also put the link in the description to his channel. He's got some good stuff. He's mainly all about sports. Now I'll be talking about pretty much anything you guys want to hear, but Keegan's your guy for sports, which we will be discussing today. Alrighty, first topic we're going to be covering today is Kyrie Irving and the Boston Celtics. So the stats for the Celtics without Kyrie this season are pretty good. They are from the point of about mid-February, they were 9-2 throughout the season without Irving, and I know they've struggled with Irving. Keegan, do you want to say anything about that?
Yeah, it's tough because you got it's kind of like a difficult situation because you got the stats that look like it just makes the stats say that they're better without Kyrie. Now, I think there might be some truth to that, but you also have to look at the fact that the teams that they played without Kyrie were not very good. I don't think any of them were in the playoffs. So you also have to consider that. But I do think he just kills chemistry. He's a very iso ball player. I think he's a selfish player, and Brad Stevens' system, I just don't think it's a good fit in terms of Kyrie's play in Brad Stevens' system. So I do think long term they'd be better if they either re-sign and trade or just let him walk this offseason, honestly.
Now, there's rumors that Anthony Davis is considering the Celtics. Now, I don't think that what the Pelicans want for him is what should be given. I know they were kind of asking for a few draft picks, Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, and a couple other guys. I think they want too much for AD. I don't think we should give up all our young talent or draft picks, you know. Well, draft picks don't matter as much as young talent, but I think, Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, those two are a pretty good duo. They proved themselves last playoffs. And again, that kind of ties into the being without Kyrie thing. I mean, they beat the Bucks. Game 7 was kind of a rough series. But then they looked really good against the 76ers, beat them 4-1. Brought
Yeah.
the Cavs to Game 7. And honestly, in my opinion, they should have won that Game 7. Um, but they lost. Let's see, the score was 87-79. It was very, very close all the way up until the end. But I think what killed them was just their shooting. I mean, they were 29 for 85 in field goals. They were 7 for 39 in three-point shooting. Like, they had the ability to
Yeah.
win that game. They just couldn't hit their shots.
No, definitely. I think a lot of that was just the young talent. The moment was too big for it. Looked like everyone except for Tatum. Brown disappeared. Rozier disappeared. Smart was a non-factor. Other than Tatum and Horford, no one really played their game. So I think any other day they'd probably win that, but it was just the inexperience. So this year, I think they would probably get it done, but it was their first real playoff run together.
Right, and I mean, most of them had never really seen the likes of LeBron either. He was kind of non-existent in Game 1, but after that, he really found his rhythm, and, he started going like typical LeBron playoff beast mode, but he really did carry
Definitely.
that team, but, I mean, like I said, they had the potential to win that game, but 29 for
Without a
85 field
doubt.
goal shooting is just, that's unacceptable.
Yeah. Yeah, them and the Rockets basically did the same thing in those game sevens. They just kept throwing up brick after brick from three, and that's really what killed them. Like when you only score, what did you say they had 79 points? You're not
Yep.
going to win very often.
Yeah, definitely in a Eastern Conference Finals game. I mean, you're not just playing some low tier team, like you're playing a pretty good team for them to have made it that far. Granted, LeBron's
Yeah, for
team
sure.
wasn't the best, but I mean, LeBron
They
did
still
go
got to the
off and
finals for a
carried them.
reason.
Right. And I mean, they had no Gordon Hayward, no Kyrie Irving. I think Tice was out for most of the playoffs too. So a lot of their core
Yeah.
guys were gone. And I mean, they still performed really well. Granted, like you said, there may be some truth to them being better without Kyrie in a sense, but I mean, like I've seen several articles and a lot of people say that, without Kyrie, they still aren't a championship contender, but with him, they possibly could be.
Yeah, and I agree with that as well. I think this season, when I was talking to some of my friends the other day about this, I was saying this season they're not making the finals without Kyrie. However, when Tatum and Brown hit their prime, I think it'd be better to not have Kyrie on that roster. right now they're better playoffs with him. But in terms of Tatum and Brown's growth, and maybe even Rozier, if they keep him long term, Kyrie I think would need to go.
Yeah, I agree. And I've heard a lot too, people saying that Kyrie just hasn't worked well with the team. He's been kind of toxic in the locker room. He's yelling at guys. Now, see, yelling at people to get them fired up is one thing, but I think if you're just too harsh on them and you're kind of just criticizing them 24/7, then I mean, things
Yeah,
aren't going to go well between the team, and it could make them possibly perform worse in the long run.
yeah, definitely. And I think a lot of it is, I think these young guys, like they went on this playoff run last year, and now Kyrie's here telling everyone what to do, and they're like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, whoa! We were a game away from the finals without you. What gives you the right to be all up in our face like this?" You know what I mean? So I definitely think there might be some tension there, which it's hard to play basketball when you're angry at half your team or whatever.
Yeah, I agree with that. Plus, I mean, you look at like Kyrie's he's kind of acting very strange lately. He came onto the team. He said he wanted to see what did he say? Like he wanted to see his number in the rafters or something like that.
Yeah, he was talking big time future plans.
Right, and now he's like, get those cameras out of my face. He's saying, I'm not gonna miss this when I'm done playing. He's talking about how he just wants to keep a low profile, but if you want to be the star of a team, you're not gonna keep a low profile. That's just not how it goes.
That's the thing I don't get, and I'm going to be talking about that tonight on my show. But I don't get why he wanted to be the man of it, the guy. He wanted to be the guy that's what he said. That's why he wanted to leave Cleveland because LeBron was there, and you're not going to be the guy when LeBron's there. But then he doesn't want cameras in his face and media attention. Like that comes with it. That's part of the responsibility you have to deal with, and not everyone can handle it. And I don't know if Kyrie's going to be able to handle it moving forward.
Right, and I'm also wondering if maybe that's kind of playing into a role of why he's been the way he has been towards his teammates. Is he's kind of got all that stress and pressure of being in the spotlight, and I mean,
Yeah,
like we said though, like you're gonna be the star of a team. You're gonna be in the spotlight. I mean, you have
yeah,
a possible top 5 point guard in the NBA. Like everybody's gonna talk about you. People are gonna want to interview you. Get your perspective from games and this and that.
yeah.
So
The
to
thing
me,
that I
that
always
just doesn't
kind of
make sense.
yeah, for sure. And the thing that confuses me to an extent is um, last year he wasn't like this. You know what I mean? And I think it's because last year the season was going good when Kyrie was playing, and now it's starting to go south a little bit, and he's just grumpy all the time. It seems, and he doesn't want to be there some nights, and on the bench he just looks like he doesn't care. So I don't know if it's just because they're losing or if the media is starting to get to him or a combination of both, but there's definitely something wrong mentally with Kyrie this season.
Yeah, I agree. He's a totally different person. Like his personality has kind of done like a 180-degree turn. Like you
Yeah,
look at last year is kind of when he was talking about, I want my number in the rafters, blah blah blah, and he was so motivated to do well. He was always, even when he was hurt and like out for the playoffs, he wasn't saying negative things. He was cheering his team on. He was there for them. But this
yeah,
season, like you said, they've been struggling a bit. So I wonder if that kind of plays into that. And I'm almost wondering too if the fact that they're struggling and a lot of media is kind of trying to cover that and ask him about it and ask the team about it. Maybe that's why he doesn't want the cameras in his face, is just because he's sick of hearing about how they're not doing well.
yeah, for sure.
But I mean, I guess we'll just have to see how the rest of the season plays out, and maybe they can turn it
Yeah,
around. I was hoping that, post for a while there after the All-Star break, they were looking really, really good. They went on a pretty good winning streak. They were beating good teams, and then they just went south again. So I don't know what happened.
yeah, yeah. I think there's a few things that need to be fixed before they can make a playoff run. But I think I'm still not counting them out. I still think they have a chance to make the finals. They're not my pick to, but when you just have that much talent and Brad Stevens, who I think is a great coach, who also has struggled this year, I think a lot of this is on Brad, and he might be getting a pass by some people when he shouldn't be. But if they make the finals, I might just take back everything I said about Kyrie because if you're gonna be a drama queen in the regular season, but you get it done in the playoffs, hey, it is what it is. If they can make the finals still, I see Kyrie staying, but if they don't do that, this offseason is going to be a big question. If they like get bounced second round, I don't know what their next move is.
Right, and I mean, the East this year is just looking so strong. They're looking for the first time in quite a few years. I mean, I'd say the East is looking a lot stronger than the West. Usually it was the West that was the most dominant, but I
Yeah,
mean, if the playoffs were to start right this moment, now obviously there's quite a few games left, things can change, but if the playoffs were to start right this moment, they would be facing off against the 76ers in the first round, which to me, there's a great potential for a first round loss and they just get booted out in the very beginning. I mean, but that's just
that
my
would be
opinion.
tough. That'd be tough if they lost in the first round. That would be the worst thing that could happen for them.
I think I think if you run back the playoffs of last year, I don't think they make it past the 76ers. I think the 76ers were just so inexperienced. I mean, they had just been bottom of the East for so many years. They didn't have any playoff experience. They weren't used to that kind of position to be in and that level of, playing that they need to be at, which I think hurt them.
Hmm.
I think it hurt them immensely. Not to mention the fact that the Celtics were kind of fired up. The young guys were hyped over their first
Yeah,
series win
underdog
over the
mentality
Bucks. So,
for sure. I think I don't know how I feel on the Sixers Celtics and if they play enough playoff series because like on one hand the Celtics have dominated the Sixers over the last 5 years roughly and I know 5 years ago doesn't really matter but even the last 2 years it's been all Celtics in this quote unquote rivalry, very one-sided rivalry. But at the same time the Sixers made two huge moves this year. They got Jimmy Butler and they got Tobias Harris, and Embiid is playing at an MVP level. If they were like a 2 seed, he'd be in that discussion. He's put up 27 and 13 roughly. So on one hand, you just want to look at the history and say the Celtics have dominated, but on the other hand, you'd have to think the Celtics are struggling and the Sixers are looking up. So maybe this is where it kind of gets reversed. And if the Celtics get a first round exit, that's going to be really tough for them. And this offseason is going to be a tough, very tough to make decisions and what they need to do.
yeah, I think that if they don't make it deep into the playoffs, I'd honestly wouldn't be surprised if Kyrie kind of went AWOL, either requested a trade or, wanted to go somewhere else. I wouldn't be surprised one bit.
Yeah. Because Kyrie's just weird, dude. I don't know what to expect with Kyrie at this point. He's definitely a very weird person.
Yeah, and I mean, he kind of played under LeBron's shadow for a few years, and then being traded to the Celtics, he knew he was going to be at the top. He knew he was going to be in the spotlight. So, maybe he just kind of one of those careful what you wish for kind of moments. Like, he wanted to be
Yeah.
number one. He wanted to be so well known and, go down in history. But maybe once that actually kind of played out and he got the attention he initially asked for, he just decided against it and maybe just doesn't like it. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. For sure. Yeah.
Also,
It's.
sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say no. That happens a lot with just any situation. You just don't realize how much responsibility comes with all that fame or all those benefits or whatever. There's a lot of negatives that come with it too.
Yeah, I agree with
Yeah.
that. I think it's a tough position to be in for sure. But I mean, you look at guys like LeBron and Kobe and all the stars, like they handled it really, really well.
Yeah, they don't get enough credit for that. Like LeBron, I'll just use LeBron in particular because he's the most current player. He gets criticized after every interview, and they'll be like, "Oh, he's throwing his teammates under the bus," and it's like I just don't see where people come up with these things, and like I just think LeBron handles it well. I never see him snap at the media. I've never really seen him get upset with them. He answers all the questions even after tough losses, and I think all star players, LeBron being the current one, best player in the world, quote unquote, they all handle it very well, and they get shit on for it still somehow.
Yeah, I agree. He seems to be the most mature when it comes to that. He gets criticized, he gets stuff thrown in his face, and he kind of just brushes it off and realizes that it's just most of the time, media looking for views and looking to get a reaction out
Yeah,
of
they're
them.
looking for a headline. That's what they get paid to do. They try like they don't tell you, but they're trying to get these players to. They like it when these players flip out on them because that just gives them more publicity.
Oh, exactly, and it really throws that headline. I mean, you look at you could just be even scrolling down your Facebook timeline and you'll see several posts from several outlets that, for example, say LeBron decided to one day snap because he was just having a tough day, that would be everywhere. That's all you would see, and they would get so many
Oh,
views,
without a
and
doubt.
that's all they want. So, I mean, I could kind of see maybe that's also what gets to Kyrie is they try to get reactions out of him, but who
Yeah,
knows?
and these players know that's what they're doing, so it might even be more frustrating because they're like, "Oh, you're trying to get me to snap." Like, just knowing someone's trying to get under your skin might even get under your skin even more.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%, and it's got to be tough too, because you look at you look at LeBron, you look at Kyrie, they're kind of having struggling seasons. So then they don't want to struggle. They want to be dominant, they want to win. So to have that kind of thrown back in their face can definitely put them over the edge. And
Yeah,
I honestly don't blame a lot of players for, snapping at media because, like you said, that's what they try to do. So,
yeah. The thing is, people don't like forget. People forget that these players, they're still humans. They're just very, very good at a sport. Like they have normal emotions just like us. If somebody was in my camera, like I play in a men's league game, if someone came after to me and was like, "There's rumors that this team plays better without you. What are your thoughts?" I'd be like, "Dude, get the fuck out of my face. Like, what the hell's your problem?" So like the fact that they very rarely snap and when they do, it gets thrown back in their face, I just think is bullshit.
yeah, I agree with that. It's just like, come on, man, get off my back. We're struggling. Nobody's superhuman. Everybody has bad games. I mean, you look at players like Steph Curry, arguably the best 3-point shooter in history, arguably the best shooter in history. He has games where he may go 3 for 20. Like it happens. Everybody has
No,
off
100%.
days, and that's got to be so frustrating for them. Knowing that so many people are expecting such a dominant performance, and then when they don't perform, to just be criticized day after day for it, it definitely would get old.
Yeah, for sure.
Moving on, Gordon Hayward. Going back to the Celtics for this one, Gordon Hayward's seemed to be struggling too, just like the rest of the Celtics. I'm not sure the exact stats of the last few games. I saw them before, but he's being criticized very deeply right now. He's having very tough games. What are your thoughts on him, and do you think he's still an asset to the team?
I think he absolutely is long term. I don't know how he turns it around this year because he's had stretches where he played pretty good. I remember not too long ago he had a stretch where he went 8 straight games over a course of 8 games. He was averaging about 16 points a game, 5 rebounds, 5 assists, which is a pretty solid stat line compared to what he's doing now. I think a big deal with this is Brad. I don't know how often you watch Celtics games, but when you do, look at Hayward. And if you notice when they run their offensive plays, a lot of the time, he's just sitting in the corner as a decoy, kind of. And that's never really been what Hayward's game is. He's not an ISO player who you can just give the ball and he'll get you a bucket. And he's not somebody who's just be used as a spot up shooter. It's kind of in the middle. You have to run plays for him. You have to get him open. Got to get him coming off screens, and then he's a decent passer for a small forward. I definitely like him ball handling, so I think he can be good for this team. I think it's on Brad, and if you noticed, he plays better without Kyrie in the lineup too. So I think it's on Kyrie. I think it's on Brad, and I also just think it's an injury he's never dealt with before, and it's going to take time. I expect next year them to figure it out, and I think next year he'll be a lot better. This year, though, I'm not sure if they can figure it out.
Right, and just looking at these stats here, so the 3 games pre All Star break, he was averaging 21 points a game, 4.7 rebounds, 4.7 assists, and 5 games post All Star break, he was averaging only 5.2 points per game, 30%
Yeah.
field goal percent, 2.8 rebounds, 3.2 assists, zero point 0.4 steals. Now his stats just seem to have plummeted post All Star break. Now I I don't know whether or not I really feel too strongly towards stats post break. Everybody's different. Some people carry their momentum into All Star breaks. Some people don't and just need to find their groove again. But it also here it says on January 2nd in Minnesota, he scored 35 points on 14 of 18 shooting, but then 12 days later had a 3.1 assist game against Brooklyn.
Hmm.
So the
Yeah, he's been very
inconsistency
streaky
seems to
this
be
year.
there, but again,
Yeah.
coming off an injury like that, though, I mean, I've like he broke his leg. It's gonna take him a while. You know, he had a whole season off. Taking a whole year off definitely throws off your momentum. You know, you may get lazy. I mean, because breaking your leg, you're bedridden for quite a while. So you know
Yeah.
you're not exercising. You're not out there playing on the court. You're not even practicing. You're kind of just
Mhm.
waiting for to heal up. But
Yeah, like to
I
put in context. Oh, sorry, keep going.
so like I mean I've broken my ankle before, and then trying to go back and play baseball or basketball after that was really tough. You know, I was almost scared in a sense to get back out there and play because I didn't want to get re-injured. And I think that
Yeah.
even though you're a professional, you know, you hide it better than most, but you still know in the back of your mind that you're more prone for an injury again, and you know you don't want that to happen. So
Yeah, you can definitely see on some of Hayward's drives when he goes to the basket. Last second, he kind of fades away and puts up a floater, and you can tell he's playing scared. Like he used to go strong to the hole. He would look for contact. Now he's trying to avoid it. You can definitely see, except for those nights where he goes out there, he'll drop his 30-point games. He's being much more aggressive. He's not playing scared. That's one of the biggest things coming off an injury like this, and you can definitely notice it with Hayward.
yeah, I definitely agree. That's a tough thing. And no matter what happens, you always have people criticizing that, like, oh, well, you know, he healed, he got to practice before he came back. You know, he wasn't just thrown out there 2 days after he, was cleared to play. But
Yeah.
again, like you said before, I mean, we're all human. We all have emotions. You know, we all have fears. And that's a big thing. You're a professional sports player. You're getting paid millions. That's literally your dream. That is what you want to do in life. And you don't
Yeah.
want to ruin that whatsoever. So you're going to play scared like it happens.
Yeah, without a doubt. These guys have been trying to get there since they were a lot of them like 6, 7, 8 years old. This is what they've wanted to do their whole lives. So like you said, once you get there, you're gonna do whatever it takes to stay up there. And if were to get that same injury again, it's safe to say his career would be over.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, you look at Derrick Rose, he was probably, I would say, at the time of his prime, either the best or second best point guard in the league. And then he goes and gets injured, comes back. I mean, he was still decent, but you could tell, he kind of lost his momentum, and then just getting re-injured time after time again, you could tell that really took a toll on him. He went from being one of the best in the league to very questionable on his abilities now.
Yeah, for sure. And it's actually nice to see Derrick Rose bounce back this year. But like people are pushing Hayward to get good this year. It took Derrick Rose like 5 years to finally become decent again, and he's still not back to what he used to be. So people just don't understand how gruesome these injuries are and how hard they are to come back. And I just think time will tell with Hayward. I don't think he'll ever be back to what he once was, but I think he can get back to a 17 point per game guy, 5 assists, 5 rebounds, for sure, especially in a Brad Stevens system.
And especially I mean, you look at basketball, especially in basketball, that's such a physical sport. I mean, you're constantly running, jumping, whatever it may be. So to look at players like Derrick Rose and Gordon Hayward with leg injuries, that's really, really tough to come back. Especially, I mean, if they had like broken a finger or something, that's not going to be as severe, or,
Yeah,
mess with them as much as a leg injury. Because I mean, you're using your legs more. You're constantly running, whatever it may be. So those are tougher
yeah,
to come back from, in my opinion. So I think it will take
yeah.
longer. And like you said, I think Hayward just needs some time to kind of get back in the groove, get a feel, get over his fear of getting re-injured.
Yeah, definitely with a player like Derrick Rose too, especially who relied on so much athleticism. And the thing that's tough for Hayward is he was never the most athletic to begin with. So when you're already need to use skill over athleticism because you're not quite the most athletic, he has lost even more athleticism. So now it's just not as easy for him to beat people off the dribble, uh, create his own shot, play good defense. He's just not as fast, quick, as strong as these guys out there. So you need like a full year really to recover from that. So
Right,
like
like
I've said a
you
few times, just people are rushing him, and it's gonna take time when he's not already athletic to begin with, and now he's even less athletic. That's just gonna hurt a lot.
Yeah, you 100% lose your explosiveness with something like that. I mean, Derrick Rose, He wasn't even really like a three-point shooter or that type of player. He was a drive to the basket, you know, dunk, layup, whatever it may be, run through defenders. He was very
Yeah,
physical.
100%.
So that hurts a player like that, like even more than just, if you're one of those go off a pick and roll, take a jump shot, whatever it may be. If you're
Yeah,
very,
100%.
and especially like a player of that size, that you have to use even more of your potential strength to get through, people that are 6, 7 inches bigger than you and outweigh you by 50 plus pounds.
Yeah, without a doubt. And that's been a huge thing for Derrick Rose this season, why he's doing successful, because he's finally got a jumper. So he's finally learned to cope with not having that athleticism. And that's the thing with Hayward. When his shot's not falling down, he's not going to be able to get to the rim. But when his shot is falling down, they're going to have to close out on him, and then he can blow by because they're worried about him shooting. So it's basically when you watch him, if his 3 points falling, he's playing good. When it's not, or he's not taking them, that's when the defenses don't really have to worry about him.
Right, because then you almost expect like what he's going to do if he's got the ball and he's making a play, whereas if you don't know whether he's going to pull up, take a jump shot, drive, whatever it could be, then you can't predict it as much. And if you can predict it, especially at the caliber of an NBA player, you're going to be able to play that person much better.
Yeah, without a doubt. It just becomes a whole lot easier when a player's one dimensional.
Alrighty, moving on. The Milwaukee Bucks. Do you think that they are a championship team this year? They are currently 48 and 16. They hold the best record in the NBA, number one in the East. People are talking about Giannis, this and that, and they just seem to be in the spotlight right now. Seem to be the most dominant team. Now Giannis is just an absolute animal. Like he can play any team very well. Whoever's on him, he can most likely, outpower, outplay, outperform. Do you think that they could be a championship team, or do you think that they need to work on some things before they could be?
I still don't see it with this team. They're a great regular season team. Giannis is an animal. I think depending on how these playoffs go, I'm ready to give Giannis the title of best player in the NBA if they make a deep playoff run, honestly. He's just the next Shaq in terms of dominance. Like you just can't do anything to guard this guy. He just overpowers you and then dunks on you half the time. I can't say enough about Giannis. He's amazing. And Middleton's a solid all-star.
Yeah,
And they
and
got
you
shooters everywhere.
you look at
I'm
Giannis
sorry,
like
what?
when he first came into the league. Now, anybody coming fresh out of college, 9 times out of 10, they aren't going to be extremely dominant right off the bat. Usually, it
Yeah, they're
takes them a
still
couple
teenagers.
seasons. Now, Giannis, when he first came into the league, he wasn't that great, but he was also very, very scrawny. He's probably about twice the size he was when he came into the league. He's found a
Yeah, he's
groove.
a lot bigger.
He's found a good play style. And honestly, especially in a sport like basketball, getting bigger, getting stronger is huge, especially when you're a big guy like Giannis. He's what, 6'11". So if you
Yeah.
put on some muscle and get a lot stronger, you're going to be able to play your position a lot more efficiently, score more points, defend better, and kind of just
Yeah.
become a better all-around player. And he's gotten huge. This man looks like he's on freaking steroids now. Like he is just a
No,
monster.
he's like KD's height with LeBron's build. It's scary.
Right, and I think that's what helps him really become such a great player is I almost say he's kind of got a LeBron type play style where he just tries to overpower people and he's an in the paint kind of player. He doesn't really pull up
Hmm.
and shoot much. I mean, LeBron shoots more than he does, but he's
Yeah,
definitely an in the
without a
paint
doubt.
player. And watching him play the Celtics last year, because last year I didn't really follow him too much or see how he was doing. But like watching in the playoffs, it was crazy to see. Like they could just, he could post up on somebody. They just, whoever it may be, could pass him the ball. He would just back him up, or he'd just hit the Euro step. And this man was unstoppable. They could not stop him at all. Even Baines, who is probably the best defender for big guys on the Celtics right now, it was tough even for him being a big guy to stop Giannis.
Yeah, for sure. And it's not only because he's just stronger than everyone. He's faster than most of them too. He's got these long ass legs and these huge strides. It's like how do you get in front of that?
It's
But
one of
and
those things it's tough because you can't decide. Do you double team him and you know bank on the
and the
fact
thing
that
is, they've
somebody
surrounded him
else.
with shooters. So it's tough to do that now.
Exactly,
Because you
because
got
he can just
Middleton who
kick
can
it
knock
out.
down the three, Bledsoe can knock down a three, Miritich, Brooke Lopez, everyone on this team on the floor at almost all times can knock down the three ball. So you send the double, he's a good enough passer, he's going to find it. Now, the only reason I don't have them making the finals, and I do have the Raptors coming out of the East, is just due to lack of star depth. And by that, I mean the Raptors, star depth and defense, because you look at the Raptors, look at the starting lineup. You got Kyle Lowry, great defender, or very good defender. Danny Green, very good defender. Kawhi, very good defender. Ibaka, very good defender. Marcus Saul, very good defender. Siakam, very good defender. OG Anunoby, very good defender. You got everyone on that team can play defense. Now with the Buck, and you got Kawhi Leonard, who's a superstar. Marcus All, who's an all-star caliber player. Kyle Lowry's an all-star caliber player. Siakam's an all-star caliber player. The Bucks, you got two real all-stars in Giannis and Middleton, and then a bunch of good role players. And that's awesome for a regular season, but I still think they're one more all-star away from being that in that finals contention.
Yeah, and I agree with that. Like, and the thing that people don't realize is you can't really. I mean, sure, regular season's very important. You know, teams that are dominant in the regular season, there's a very good chance that they're going to carry that into playoffs. But I mean, you look at players like LeBron, who it seems like in the regular season he almost doesn't even really care about how well he does, and he's kind of a very, generous player. He doesn't try to carry the team as much as he does in playoffs, but then playoffs times comes around, he just completely changes his play style, and he just becomes an animal. He just goes beast mode. Now, I think you kind of hit the nail on the head right there. Like, sure, they're a great regular season team, but how will they perform in the playoffs? Sure, they may play a great team from the East or the West a couple times a year, a few times a year, but when you have a whole season and the rest of your season like riding on that series, it's just a whole different game.
Yeah, without a doubt. You see it with Rondo too, especially like playoff Rondo is not the same as regular season Rondo whatsoever. There's just certain players who I don't know if it's they care more, or if they just get adrenaline rushes, or what it is, but just playoffs are a completely different animal. And I think playoffs also expose coaching issues a lot more. I think the reason the Sixers lost in five last year is one, like you hinted on earlier, was inexperience, but also I don't think Brett Brown's a great coach, and I think Brad Stevens outcoached him. So that'll also be interesting to see how Budenholzer does as a coach. I think he's a great coach. I think he deserves Coach of the Year. But we'll see if he can outcoach the Raptors coach, or if he can outcoach Brad Stevens for that matter. Because I still think the Celtics should beat the Bucks. I just don't think they can beat the Raptors.
Yeah, the Raptors, but again, you never know with the Raptors because last year they were favorites for the East too, and then they just choked and got swept by the Lakers, or not the Lakers, the Cavaliers. I want to say Lakers now because that's where LeBron is, but he wasn't last year. But I mean, you're losing four to the Cavaliers, who were going into the playoffs looked at as the worst team in the playoffs. And I mean, granted, LeBron went beast mode. He dropped like 40, 50 points a game. It seemed like, and so that being said, it almost seems to me that year after year, no matter what happens, like however great the Raptors are looking, regular season, who they have on their team, it seems like they almost seem to choke like every year.
No, definitely. And I never bought into the Raptors last year either. I didn't. I picked the Cavs to come out of the East once again. I picked LeBron to make the finals every year until somebody proves me otherwise. This year I didn't, but um, what was I gonna say? I just think Kawhi for DeRozan is just a different element. I think Kawhi's a Finals MVP before. He's won a Finals MVP before. He got championship experience, and they got Danny Green too, who doesn't get talked about much anymore. Which he's just a role player, so I get it. But he's also got championship experience. He has the record for most threes in the finals, so he knows he can perform when the spotlight's on. So I just think when your best player is that much, like when your best player is that much better in comparison from Kawhi to DeRozan, I just think that makes all the difference in the world, because it's not like the role players weren't showing up last year. DeRozan just disappeared down the stretch and late in games, and there was times in the playoffs where he got benched in the fourth quarter because he just wasn't doing anything. So I think Kawhi for DeRozan makes all the difference in the world.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, Kawhi's a very, very good player all around. He can score, he can defend, he can do it all. And I mean, like you said, DeRozan just really fell off, but Kawhi seems to have that kind of clutch to him. And I mean, like stated before, sure, regular season matters, but come playoffs, if you can't perform under the pressure, then you're not going to make it very far. But with players like Kawhi, who's proven that they can play under pressure, especially now, like before being said with the Raptors choking, having a player like Kawhi on that team, maybe he can lead them in a better direction, help them perform better in those clutch moments. Whether it be like Game 6, Game 7, or even just throughout each and every game. Everybody's more nervous. There's more riding on it, so maybe he can kind of help them, perform even with all that pressure and lead them to victory.
Yeah, without a doubt, I definitely think he will. Um, the I just don't see a team in the East that could beat them. I just, like you just said, the clutch gene that I think Kawhi has, and I just think that's going to be the factor. And best player in the East, I think, is now it's difficult for me because usually when you have the best player, I pick you to win the series a lot of the time. And I think Giannis is having a better year than Kawhi. But to this point, Giannis hasn't even won a playoff series. So I just trust Kawhi more than Giannis come playoff time at the moment. But we'll see.
Right, and like you said before, with Kawhi being a Finals MVP, he has that experience. Yeah, Giannis has made playoffs and he has playoff experience, but he hasn't made it that far. So it's a whole different ball game. You're playing even tougher teams at that point the further you go. So who knows?
Yeah, and he hasn't even made out the first round. So
And again, time will tell. I mean, at this point, it's just all predictions, and we're just going based off past stats and whatnot and regular season stats. But I mean, come crunch time, it's strange to. I mean, you look at players like LeBron, who looked very very weird last year. He was kind of inconsistent in a way. Like game one against the Celtics, he only had like what 21, 23 points or something like that. But then,
he was a non-factor.
yeah, and then the few games after that, he just went beast mode. So it's hard to tell. Some players may be streaky, some may be clutch. It almost seems like every year there's a different player that steps up.
Yeah, and the reason why I don't have full faith in Giannis, and once he can do this, I think he could be one of the best players of all time, is just playoffs. Just 3-point shooting becomes even more important. Just everything becomes emphasized in the playoffs. And in today's NBA, 3-point shooting is a big part of that. And if I'm the Raptors, I'm letting Giannis shoot as many threes as he wants. So if he can knock down some threes, they'll be fine. But I just don't see it happening, and that's why I would prefer to have Kawhi, who I would trust to knock down a three in a big situation, whereas Giannis cannot.
Right. And another thing with that is like the Bucks coaching, will they try to, kind of form Giannis into being a more of a shooter in the playoffs, or will they possibly just try to rely on his talent and his strength and force him in the paint like he usually does? Because if he can't shoot, but they can shut him down in the paint, they may have to kind of try to change his play style. But who knows? I guess we'll just have to see. And that will be one thing that will really test like the coach's ability too, is will they be able to make the changes necessary?
For sure, yeah. Like I said, playoffs coaching just becomes even more important. So we'll have to see if the Raptors are able to game plan to make him into a jump shooter, and we'll have to see if the Bucks are able to game plan to make that so that doesn't have to happen, and he can still get his looks in the paint and kick to his other shooters. Or maybe Giannis just starts knocking down some threes. But either way, it comes down to a lot of game planning, and we'll see
Right,
how the
like
coaches
it
duel it
could
out.
like it could possibly be they try to form Giannis into more of a shooter, or instead of that, they may just throw him in the paint, give him the ball, distract people, and then kick it out to Middleton or Bledsoe or something. But
Yeah.
again, it time will tell with that scenario. And who knows? Maybe even the defense on like Raptors or whoever they play, maybe the defense won't be able to adjust either. Maybe they'll try to bet more on the fact that they may rely heavily on the three instead of just dumping it off to Giannis every time, and then that allows him to shine with his like natural play style.
Yeah, for sure. There's a lot of different ways they can approach it. So I think the main two ways you could either double Giannis and make his shooters knock down shots, or everyone can stay home and you just let Giannis try to beat you by himself. And I don't think you can win with either way. It's just a matter of fact of do you get lucky in the sense that if you let the shooters shoot, are they going to miss or are they going to hit? And at that point, there's really nothing you can do if that's your game style. Or if you let Giannis take over, is he on or is he not? And whatever game style you pick with, you just got to hope that it works out for the best because there's no way you could shut down the 3-point shooters and Giannis. They're just too talented of a team to do that too. So it's all
Right,
about picking
and
the right
that's
team,
what wins
the right
games too
strategy.
is the variety. You know, you just have one play style. You try to drive, you try to dump it off to some guy in the paint, and that's all you can do. I mean, the defense is going to adapt to that. The defense is going to know, and they're going to shut you down. Versus where you have the ability to shoot threes or drive, it's harder for them to adjust and harder for them to predict what's going to happen. And that's what wins you games is the variety. But then that also comes down to the player's ability to perform in the playoffs. Because if you have that variety, you look good all season. But then come playoff times, your typical shooters can't make their threes, they can't make their jump shots. Then you're kind of screwed. You kind of just have to rely on players like Giannis to do what they do best. But then at that point, the defense can adjust, and it just becomes a whole mess.
Yeah, for sure. I think that was the big problem with the Lakers this year. They had no 3-point shooters. The defense was just clog the paint, and that we'll see if the Bucks can keep their 3-point shooting up. If not, I see them getting bounced pretty quickly. But I don't see any team beating them other than the Raptors. Is what I'm sticking with. I think the Celtics do still have a chance though, but it all rides on like we've been saying. If these shooters can knock down the shots, and if Giannis can come through when it matters the most.
Right, and I think if Kyrie and Gordon Hayward turn around how they've been playing, and maybe even like with Brad Stevens, he's taken a lot of heat this year. Now he's gone from last year, people were very, very upset that he didn't win like Coach of the Year, to this
Yeah.
year he's taken a lot of heat. Does he have the same ability? And I noticed you talking about that too. Is he's not calling timeouts when he should be. He's letting runs happen for too long. He's just not
Yeah.
having things play out how they should. Um, but I mean, again, that's one of those things where if he can kind of change that around and change the play style of the team, change his coaching ability to kind of more of like last year's how it was set up and how well they did, and Kyrie and Gordon Hayward can turn it around. And if Kyrie could become more of a team player and give those young guys the chance that they showed they deserved last year, I think that the Celtics could probably be the best team in the league.
Yeah, definitely. The talent's there. It's just a matter of getting it to glue all together, which is the most difficult thing when before the year started, I heard some people saying this, and I wasn't buying into it at first, but now it's really shown. Having too much talent can hurt you sometimes. And they just have so many guys that deserve to get so many shots up, and it's just difficult as a coach managing that many stars. I think what Brad did last year was amazing, managing all those at the time, basically role players. And I think Brad Stevens, with his college background, that suits him more. Is a bunch of good players, no true stars. Now you got some stars on your team. It's harder to manage their egos, give them their 20 shots a game, plus keeping all the role players happy with their minutes and their shot attempts. And that's the biggest struggle with the Celtics this year is getting Kyrie, Tatum, Hayward, Rozier, Brown, Horford, all these guys the shots they deserve while keeping the ball movement, while not going too ISO heavy. It's definitely not an easy task, and Brad struggled with that this year. But we'll see if he can turn around in the playoffs.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that this year's just kind of a weird year for them. It's kind of an off year. But I mean they do have I mean what are they? They're 38 and 26, so 64 games, so they have what 18 games left for regular season. I think that
Yeah,
there needs to be a lot of work done between now and when playoffs begin from the coaching side and from the players side for them in order for them to be a finals contender.
for sure. And tonight they play the Warriors, so I think that will be a big game. They can definitely send a message tonight with a win, or even just a competitive game down to the wire.
Yeah, I mean even if they just like even if they don't win but they just don't get blown out, they put up a fight, I think that could really show a lot. But if they get blown out, then I really don't know what to say about that. I mean, I like you've said, and I agree with you. I do think that they still have the ability to make finals and win a championship. but they just have to perform, and the coaching needs to be there as well.
Yeah, for sure.
Which brings us to our next topic, which is the Lakers season and predictions for the rest of the season and playoffs. As it sits right now, the Lakers are looks like about 5.5 games out of the 8 seed with 18 or so games left. They haven't been looking that great. What are your thoughts on that? And do you think that they can squeeze in at the 8 seed and make a playoff run?
I don't see him making the playoffs at this point. They needed to win these last two games. The fact that they lost to the Suns was pathetic. When they lost that game, I had them. I gave up on hope. And last night was the really last chance, and they blew it. I've as a LeBron fan, I made a not a promise, but I on one of my streams a couple weeks ago, I said there's almost zero chance the Lakers don't make the playoffs, and I couldn't be any more disappointed with this team. And even LeBron, I think I really don't know there's a lot of issues that I really can't identify because it's a different problem every night. But the consistency that I see, or the consistent problem that I see, is no 3-point shooting, and they don't have a true big man. Now, JaVale McGee has had a good year, and if you look at his numbers, he hasn't been bad, and he can block shots, but he's like a help defender. He can't shut down a good center, and a lot of these centers just bully him in the paint. He's pretty skinny for a center. So I honestly think that if they get Anthony Davis and two more shooters this offseason, that fixes all their issues, or at least a big majority of them. But as far as this year, I've given up hope. I just don't think this team is good enough, and I don't think the pieces fit well enough. Not enough shooters, and not a good enough big man.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I mean, I kind of took some flack from I think it was you and some other people for from the beginning. I've said I was like, there's no way they're making playoffs, and I mean, I took some heat for that. And I also kind of second guess myself at times. I'm like, yeah, they're a young team. They aren't that great, but you never know because you look at the Cavs last year. The Cavs were terrible, but they still made finals. So I kind of second guessed myself, and it was really hard to tell. But again, it's a new team, and maybe next year, even if they keep the same players, keep the same setup, maybe they'll do better. But I think if they get Anthony
Yeah.
Davis and like you said, like a couple more shooters, then I think they'll really be a contender. Like LeBron and AD, that would just be the nastiest duo like in the NBA.
Yeah, for sure. And a big part of it is LeBron missed 20 games. If he doesn't miss 20 games, they're in the playoffs, I think, no doubt. Because they were fourth in the West when he got hurt. So that was obviously huge because they had to adjust to playing with LeBron, and then they had to learn how to play without him, and then they had to learn to play with him again. And I don't think Luke Walton's a good coach to begin with. I think he should be fired this offseason. His rotations are very bad. Caldwell Pope gets too many minutes. Josh Hart will go 2 games in a row without playing, and then he'll play 30 minutes. I just don't understand his logic. But
Yeah,
just too many injuries for this team. Lonzo Ball has been out, which people like to rag on him. He's a great defender and he's a good passer. And he's not the best 3-point shooter, but he's one of their better ones, sadly, because they just don't have shooters. And there's nights where he'll go 4 for 6 from three, which is huge for them.
yeah,
So
and
I
I
think
think the
injuries hurt.
inconsistency is just a huge problem. I
Yeah.
mean, like you said, Lonzo Ball, he's not the greatest player, but what I've seen from him is that he has a lot of game knowledge. Like he's very smart, and he has like there's very high potential for him to be like a top 20 player in the NBA, I think. But I
I'm
mean,
with
like you
you. I've
said,
always been high on Lonzo.
and I've also kind of roasted him. I've said some bad things about some negative things about him where I just didn't think he was a good player. Which granted, I mean he's not the best, he's not terrible, but I think the potential is there. He just needs to work on his his play style a little bit more and work on some certain things, and then he'll be great.
Yeah, without a doubt. He just needs to be more assertive on the offensive end. He just needs to be more of a scorer, not always looking to help get other people involved, which is great to do as a point guard. You want to get other people involved. But if you're not a scoring threat, then it just limits your ability to get other people involved because you can't drive and kick if you don't drive, and you can't draw the defense out to hit somebody on the inside if you can't shoot. So I
Exactly.
think everything in his game is fine. He just needs to learn how to become a little bit better of a scorer. He needs to get up to that 16 point per game on like 45% shooting. And then the assists will just go up with that. And the rebounds will probably stay the same. and the defense is only going to get better as he gets stronger, more athletic, a little older. He's still like 20 years old, so he's not even in his full grown man body yet. So the defense will get better. The assists will go up if he can get the points up. It's kind of, they go hand in hand. But I think he definitely has the ability to be a top 5 point guard in this league. And I think he could be a part of a big three on a championship team one day.
Yeah, and like previously stated, I mean, young guys coming out of high school or college or whatever it may be, like they're not going to be dominant as soon as they get into league. It's going to take a few years for them to kind of find their groove because like college and the NBA are extremely, extremely different. The
Very.
players are way better. The play styles are way different. You know, like you play college, you look at teams like Duke, UNC, they're playing a lot of teams that aren't even like seeded top 25. Like they're not even winning teams. But you get to the NBA, like these guys are all there because they were great players and they stood out from the rest. So it's very difficult to make that transition, and that's why like a lot of the young guys, you know, like we previously stated with Giannis, he wasn't that great when he first came in, but now he's an animal. So it just really takes a few years for them to find their groove.
For sure.
Alrighty, moving on. Bryce Harper and Manny Machado, their contracts are just absolutely through the roof. You know, very long, very high. Machado's got a 10-year, 300 million contract, and Bryce Harper has a 13-year, 330 million contract. Personally, the highest contracts I've ever seen in any sport. I don't know if there's ever been contracts that were higher than that, like higher paying or longer. I'm not too sure on that. But I like the MLB is just ridiculous with their contracts. You do not see contracts like that really anywhere else. I mean, the NBA is kind of there, but I feel like with the MLB, they just have way more guys getting the hefty, you know, long, high-paying contracts.
All guaranteed, too, which is the craziest part.
Right, and Machado went to the Padres. The Padres really aren't that great of a team. Like they have not been, you know, in the talks for even playoffs for a long time. And the Phillies were pretty good. They've got a decent lineup, which I mean is where Harper went. But again, with baseball, it's so much different versus the NBA, like you and I were talking about earlier, where like your whole team, like everybody needs to be at kind of a similar playing level, or you have to have more than just one guy that's a really good player in order to get far because it's such a team sport. You can't just have one guy carry like LeBron carrying the Cavaliers. That's just not how it works.
For sure.
And it's kind of sad to see a lot of great talent like Machado and Bryce Harper kind of money chase in a sense. Granted, I do think they deserve to be paid more than just your average player because of their talent level. But I honestly would have liked to see. I think what would have been more interesting to me if they could have made it work with salaries and whatnot is keep Machado on the Dodgers, and if Bryce Harper also went to the Dodgers, they already made the World Series. Now they add Bryce Harper to that, like that's just a whole nother level. And I don't know what your thoughts are about that.
I think that definitely would have been interesting. It'd be hard not to pick them to win the NL again and make the World Series and possibly even win it. When you have a team that already made the World Series and you just added a top, 10 MLB player, maybe top 5 excluding pitchers, because that's a whole different ball game. But I mean, yeah, that would have been nuts. I when they traded for Machado, I think they knew it was a 1-year rental. They weren't going to pay him, which I expected. That would have been cool to see. Now, with the Padres, I think that was straight money chasing. As far as the Phillies go, though, I think they could. Like I know Thomas, of course, Malinowski. With the moves they've made, and Thomas knows his baseball. He has the national, not the national. Sorry, he has the Phillies winning the NL this year. Actually, they signed Andrew McCutchen. They got Bryce, of course. They already had a decent roster. They got that catcher. I'm spacing his name. I can't think of it. They got a nice new young catcher though. So I think they can make some noise. I think they'll be in the playoffs. And Bryce has already publicly stated he's going to be recruiting Mike Trout to join them in 2020. So that team could have a bright future. As far as the Padres, right now they're not good. They do have who is regarded as the top 3 prospects out of AAA ball. So maybe in 3-4 years they'll be good. Because remember, these are 10 and 13-year deals. They're not necessarily playing for just next season. They're looking into the future. So I think Machado definitely money chased. I think Bryce was going to go anywhere that paid him that. But I do think Bryce had winning on his mind at the same time. I think Machado, honestly, and this might be me being biased because Bryce is my favorite player and I don't like Machado. But I think Bryce does have winning on his mind. But I do think both of their number one priorities was money, which does suck to see.
Right, and like I said to you earlier, the Phillies aren't terrible. Now, I don't agree that they'll win the NL. I don't think they're the best team in the NL, but they definitely are a playoff team, especially now. Um, Machado go to the Padres. That's just he clearly did not care about winning. That team's just not that great. But Machado's career stats. His batting average is 282. That's to me. I don't think that's 300 mil worthy. However, what I will say about that is he's typically a like mid to high 30 home run a year hitter, which kind of makes up for the not like sub 300 batting average for a player, getting paid 30 million a year. Whereas Bryce Harper, his career batting average is 325. Granted, he doesn't hit as many home runs, but that being said, he does get on base very well. He's a great outfielder. So he's a very great all-around player. Machado's really good at fielding too, but he just doesn't get on base or hit as well as Bryce Harper does, in my opinion. And Bryce Harper's a very mature guy. Him talking about how he was going to wear number 3 out of respect for Roy Halladay. That to me just shows the level of maturity where Machado kind of seems more immature. When they lost to the Red Sox, when they were losing, he kind of seemed to like throw a temper tantrum in a sense.
Yeah, for sure. I don't. That's a big reason why I don't like Machado and have publicly stated I don't like Machado since as long as I can remember. I think he's selfish. I think a lot of it's just immaturity. He's still a young player. He'll grow into that. But Bryce is young too, and Bryce has already shown at a young age that I think he's pretty mature. Like, perfect example, like you said, the Roy Halladay. He's taken number 3. I don't think Machado would have done that.
And I mean, the Phillies last year were kind of knocking on the door of playoffs in a sense. I mean, it looks like they were about 10 or 11 games back a wild card. They were 80 and 82. Now, you add a player like Harper to that, they're an over 500 team, without a doubt. Because if they're already, barely under, like their win percentage was 494, they're barely under 500. They're barely under being a winning team. You add a player like Harper to that, they're a winning team, without a doubt. Versus the Padres were 66 and 96, 407 win percentage. They weren't even close to making playoffs. You add a player like Machado, I still don't think they're a winning team. I don't think they're an above 500 team whatsoever.
No, for sure. The Padres are just, basically god awful at this point. And like we alluded to earlier, baseball, you're not a one-man sport. You can't just LeBron goes to any team in the NBA, and say he doesn't get hurt because I know he missed the playoffs this year, but like LeBron plays a full season on any team, they're most likely in the playoffs. Football, Aaron Rodgers goes to any team, there's a good chance they're in the playoffs. Baseball, Manny Machado was on the Orioles and look how they finished. They were the worst team in the MLB by margin.
Yeah, they only won 47 games.
Yeah, that's just pathetic. So you don't add a baseball player and become a playoff team all of a sudden. Now the Phillies is different because they added him. They added Machado. They added McCutchen. They added that catcher who I keep forgetting his name.
Was it Real Muto? Real Muto? Or was it Knapp?
It might have.
Because that's their 2 catchers. I think it was Real Muto. I don't know how to pronounce his
Yeah,
last name, but
that's ringing a bell. I don't know why I'm spacing right now. But my point is the Phillies added multiple pieces. The Padres, I don't think they added anyone significant other than Machado. So that's the difference with the two moves. I see the Phillies going deep in the playoffs.
right. And
Padres, I don't see sniffing the playoffs.
like you said, they added players other than just Bryce Harper, and even before that, I mean, they were barely not. They were barely a sub 500 team, like a
Yeah, they were
494.
already decent.
They were literally one more win, and they're five. They're a 500 team. Excuse me. But
Yeah,
the Padres, geez, like they're 30 games under 500. Like they're 66 and 96. Like that's a pretty big difference. Whereas, and just like you said, just adding Machado, that does not make them a much better team. Sure, they may win a few more games, just because he can get more RBIs than the next guy, but the Phillies definitely are a playoff team. I 100% think they make playoffs, even if they don't win their division. Because I mean, they still do have Atlanta to play against, and they still do have to beat out Atlanta. But even if they don't beat out Atlanta, I think they definitely at least make wild card. Although I could be wrong because they were only 10 games back of first place in their division, which Atlanta won their division. Atlanta was 90 and 72, and Philadelphia was only 10 games back of them without adding the pieces or without having the players that they just added. So I mean, I could be wrong. They could even win their division, but at the very least, think that they make playoffs.
yeah. If they don't make playoffs, it'd be a huge disappointment. I'd personally pick them to win the division. I'm a big Bryce guy. I think I a lot of people criticize him because like last year he only hit like 249, and the thing that the casual fan won't realize is his on base percentage was still around the 400 mark, and that's really at the end of the day what matters to a certain extent because the Nationals didn't have a good lineup around Bryce, so teams would just pitch around Bryce. They're not going to give him a good ball to hit. And if they walk him, they walk him. It is what it is. We're going to get the next guy out. With this Phillies lineup, I don't see how they're going to be able to do that. Like, they have 6 guys who are real good hitters. So they're going to have to pitch to Bryce because they're not going to, the guy on deck, they're not just going to be able to get out like they could with the Nationals. So I think his batting average will go up a lot. I think his on base percentage will go up even more. And he won't draw as many walks this year, which will make him look better in the public eye. So I see this Phillies move helping him statistically a lot too.
I 100% agree with that. And I mean, you look at Bryce Harper's performance throughout the years versus Manny Machado's. I mean, pretty much in every single category except for actually his batting average is 279. I think I had that wrong earlier. So his is like very slightly lower than Machado's, but um, his career on base percentage, his career slugging, his career ops, all higher than Machado's. The only thing that's lower is his batting average, which is 0.003% lower, which is hardly anything. And I mean, he hasn't hit as many home runs, but I don't view Bryce Harper as necessarily a power hitter. Sure, he can crank out some home runs, at least like once every couple games, but I don't view him as much of a power hitter as I do Machado, because Machado's the type of guy that you can definitely bet on him hitting 30 plus home runs a year. You can't really say the same about Bryce Harper.
I think Bryce has only done that like twice.
Yeah, last year and 2015 are the only years he has hit more than 30 home runs.
Yeah,
Whereas
so last
Machado,
year in
it's
his
kind of
MVP.
like every year.
Yeah, for sure. And the thing with Machado though that goes unnoticed that I do will give him credit for, which it doesn't go unnoticed by like real MLB fans, but when people are talking about this signing, I've noticed no one mentions like he's a former Gold Glove winner, like he's an amazing fielder. Bryce is too, but I think Machado is better at fielding at his position than Bryce is at his. And I also
Right.
think shortstop's a more significant fielding position than outfielders. Like outfielders, their diving plays are cool, but like there's more tough plays at shortstop than there is in right field. So I do think value wise on the fielding perspective, I would take Machado. So I'll give him that.
Yeah, definitely. But again, it comes down to also maturity plays a huge role in how they are as players, and I think Bryce Harper definitely beats out Machado with maturity level. I
For
think
sure.
I
All
think
in all,
Bryce
I would rather
Harper,
have Bryce.
right? I think he's more of a team leader versus Machado. I think Machado's kind of more of like a selfish, like cares more about how he does than his entire team versus Bryce Harper, who's definitely more generous and cares more about how the team does versus himself.
Yeah, for sure.
But I mean, as stated before, I don't see Padres making playoffs, but I definitely do see the Phillies
No.
making
Yep,
playoffs. Or at
for
the
sure.
very, very least, it's going to be very close if they don't make it.
Yeah, they'll be in the hunt, no doubt about it. And unless injury strikes. But
True.
baseball is a sport where you usually, other than pitchers, you're not really going to get injured most of the time.
Yeah, you just don't see it as much in fielders or especially DHs that versus like pitchers, but even then pitcher injuries don't happen too often.
Yeah, for sure.
And our last topic for today is going to be the Patriots and Robert Kraft. Robert Kraft. So this is from an article. Florida prosecutors have formally charged New England Patriots owner Robert Kraft with solicitation of a prostitute. I really did not see that coming. That one was when I heard people talking about it, I honestly thought I thought they were kidding. I thought they were being funny, like trying to joke, but then I saw the articles everywhere and one thing I'll say is I'm shocked. I did not expect that. Like that is just the last thing I expected to hear about Robert Kraft, that's for sure.
No, definitely. Like, it doesn't surprise me that it happened, honestly. He's a rich white businessman. But it does surprise me that he was dumb enough to get caught. So how I found out actually was pretty funny. I'm sleeping in one night. I was up all night playing Xbox or whatever, watching Netflix, I don't remember. And I'm sleeping in and I get a phone call. It's like 12:30 in the afternoon. And it wakes me up and it's my friend Mark Anthony from my
Yep.
Facebook. Yeah, it's him and he's like, "Bro, are you like looking at this?" I was like, "What the hell are you talking about, dude? I'm barely awake." He's like, "Robert Kraft got arrested for prostitution." And it just woke me up. I was like, "What?" I'm looking at all these articles. I'm like, "You got to be kidding me." And I just couldn't believe it was real at first. And it's mind blowing. It really is.
Yeah, I 100% agree, and that just really doesn't help the Patriots' reputation these past few years. I mean, they've had so much stuff against them, like Spygate, Deflategate. Uh, you know, with who was it? Edelman taking PEDs,
PEDs. Yeah, Aaron
and
Hernandez.
yeah, Aaron Hernandez, and now this with Robert Kraft. That really doesn't help their reputation. Granted, I don't think that's going to change how dominant they are. I still think they'll make Super Bowls, but that definitely doesn't help their reputation. And I'm just shocked. I almost wonder if, like you said, you're surprised he's too stupid to get caught. I almost wonder if he just kind of in the moment felt invincible. He's like, "Oh, I'm the owner of the Patriots. I'm very rich. Nothing can happen to me." And then boom, he gets arrested for prostitution. Like that's just, it's so crazy to me. Like everybody was so happy, we just won a Super Bowl, but then that comes out and everybody's like, "Oh God, what the heck?"
No, for sure. I think there definitely is some truth to what you said in the sense that he probably just felt invincible. These a lot of these rich, it happens with athletes too in different senses. Like these athletes will go 120 on the highway, get caught, and expect to get let go. And it's like, as we alluded to earlier, yes, they're athletes, but they're still humans. They still have to obey these laws. And there's times I think where they just think, I have so much money or I'm so important that it's not going to matter. And I got caught up in the thought, whatever, it's just a handy. And that ended up being a lot more.
Right? And like in the moment, I think you're like, "Oh, really? This like he's probably like, oh, this is no big deal. I'm Robert Kraft. It's just it's a little quote unquote massage, but still, it's illegal. And I mean, yeah, he's a very rich man, but at the end of the day, nobody's above the law. I mean, for a good example, you look at Aaron Hernandez. very popular player, one of the best tight ends in the league. You're not above the law though, and I've even seen it before. Like I've seen dash cam videos or body cam videos from police officers that either pull over or just have incidents, run-ins with professional sports players. And a lot of the times, they'll be like, "Oh, do you know who I am?" And like, no, like, yeah, I know who you are, but that doesn't mean that you can just do whatever you want and get away with it. Like, that's not how this works. And I think Robert Kraft's finally figuring that out, that he can't just do what he wants. Now, I don't know if maybe he just got caught up in a bad situation. It was kind of just wrong place, wrong time. But at the end of the day, it did happen. He did break the law. And as sad as it is, sure, I'm a Patriots fan, but I mean, I agree with nobody's above the law, and I think that him breaking the law, he does need to pay the fines, do the time, whatever it may be, whatever the laws for Florida are. I'm not too familiar with them, but
It's I was looking at it. It's about a $5,000 fine, which is what he wipes his ass with. $100 of community service, and up to a year of jail potentially. But you already know he has the best damn lawyer out there, so I don't think he's gonna get any jail time.
right. I mean, him and his lawyer may just push for, instead of jail time, can I just pay more in fines or do more community service or something or the other.
Yeah, for sure.
Now,
And they'll probably make it work out.
right, I figured something like that would be a little bit more severe, like maybe at least a couple or a few years in jail or prison. But I mean, again, every state's different, so I'm not too
Yeah.
familiar with their laws. But I mean, like you just stated, it's like for somebody like that, a $5,000 fine, that is nothing severe.
No.
To
Like if
somebody
that was
like
if
you or
I got a
me,
$5,000 fine, that'd be crazy, yeah. But for Robert Kraft, like come on, he's a billionaire.
yeah, exactly. So that's honestly nothing for him, and that's what's kind of bugs me sometimes is you see professional sports players that are extremely rich, and they get caught doing something, and they get slapped on the wrist with like a $10,000 fine. To you or me, that's ridiculous. That'd take us quite a while to pay off, but to them, they can just be like, all right, well, here's a check, write it off. Like it's really no big
Yeah.
deal to them. So I feel like sometimes, almost in a sense, they deserve a little bit harsher. But then again, you can't really treat people differently just because of they're more famous, they have more money. Like everybody's equal, so
Yeah, for sure.
so that's my thoughts on that. But
As far as the NFL handles this, what do you suspect? Do you suspect they punish the Patriots? Do you suspect they make Robert Kraft maybe even step down? Like, what do you see them? How do you see the NFL handling this?
knowing Goodell and how much he hates the Patriots, he may force Robert Kraft to step down or hand it off to somebody else. I don't think unless there are players involved or coaches involved, I don't think that any of the players or the coaches should be punished if they didn't do anything wrong, because that just wouldn't be fair to them. Because they're doing what they're supposed to, they're abiding by the laws, they didn't do anything wrong. I don't think they should be punished. But with how much Goodell hates the Patriots, I wouldn't be surprised if he tries to impose something upon Kraft.
Yeah, I think something will happen. I don't know what though, because like I don't think it's severe enough where he should have to step down. Um, and I don't think it has anything to do with the Patriots itself. So, like one of the Jets' retired safeties, said that the Patriots should lose all their draft picks this year, and I think that's just ridiculous.
Yeah, that you can't punish a team for something like that. I mean, however, you do look at things like Kareem Hunt. Like what he did had nothing to do with football, but he did get dropped. But again, that's
Yeah,
just a team trying to help better their image. They don't want negativity like that involved with them.
yeah,
But
and he's already back signed with a team, so
right, I mean, like, so I don't know. Maybe nothing will happen regarding football and ownership, but I wouldn't be surprised if Goodell tries to do something crazy just because of how much he hates the Patriots.
yeah, for sure. Goodell, I don't think he's done a good. Personally, like obviously I'm a Pats fan, so I'm a little biased, but I think in general Goodell has not been a good commissioner. And the reports are, from what I've read, that when his contract's up, the NFL will not be renewing it. And they'll be looking for a new owner, or not a new owner, a new commissioner.
Right. Yeah, I think he's just been a little biased in certain aspects, and you can't have that out of a commissioner. That's for sure. Somebody that's kind of running the show, you can't have them, just impose certain rules and regulations upon one team because you don't like them versus, another team does something and you don't do anything to them.
Yeah, like for example, when the Pats had the whole Deflategate thing, Aaron Rodgers openly admitted he asked the ball boys to overinflate the balls, and like they literally didn't care. So I don't get, that just confused me, and that just got swept under the rug like no big deal. Like they really reach with the Patriots, and I don't know why. Like it's just frustrating.
And they didn't even have like 100% evidence to go against the Patriots. So it's like, how can you sit there and impose this suspension if you don't have 100% proof? It was kind of just like, oh, he said, she said. Well, you can't go based off that.
Yeah,
Like, sure, the ball might have been deflated, but like, if you don't have evidence of how it happened, then like you can't do anything about that. But again,
no, for sure.
I think it just boils down to Goodell hates the Patriots.
No, definitely, it's pretty obvious at this point, and it's just frustrating. So hopefully he doesn't go overboard with this.
I mean, maybe he won't, but time will tell.
For sure.
But if you don't have any other topics you would like to discuss, I think we can wrap this up.
Um, no, yeah, I think that will just about do it.
Alrighty, well, thank you for joining me. It was great having
Of
you,
course. Thanks
and
for having me on.
good luck on your show. Are you going live later?
Yeah, I'll be live at 9 tonight.
Awesome. I'll definitely leave a link in the description to your channel for other people to check it out.
All right, I appreciate that.
Alrighty, well, this will conclude podcast episode 1.